One plane, one bomb, one city gone. This is Hiroshima, 1945. It could be Pittsburgh or Seattle or Detroit. Not 5 years from now, but tomorrow or the day after. To keep this from happening here, the United States Air Force needs you in its air defense network to show how an actual raid on the United States could penetrate our defenses as they stand today. By television film recording, come in, Edward R. Murrow.
See It Now is about to bring you a simulated atom bomb attack on New York City. Everything will be as it might be in reality, except, of course, there will be no bombs. We're using 3 B-29s because they are similar in type and performance to the Russian Tu-4. These B-29s will be flown off bases in Europe. The mission will take about 20 hours. Howard K. Smith, our chief European correspondent, will be talking from the flight deck of a B-29. I shall attempt to do the beginning of the narration from this control room, and later on from the radar observer's cockpit in an F-94 all-weather jet. The mission takes off from somewhere in Europe, and as is true with all missions, it begins with a briefing.
The purpose of this mission today, gentlemen, is to test the capability of the Eastern Defense Forces by making a simulated attack on New York City by using B-29s. This will be a low-level penetration attack to test and or evade the radar surveillance net. Your altitude en route will be 12,000 feet until approximately 70 miles from Bangor, arriving at Bangor at 1300 Zebra. At 1300 Zebra, you will rendezvous with 2 other B-29s.
The B-29 was selected for the mission because it is almost identical to the Russian Tu-4, which was modeled after a B-29 captured in the late war.
It is now X hours as our B-29 moves down the runway on this field in England. Loaded to the turrets, it's a long, slow, hard takeoff. We're airborne at X hours and 45 seconds. X hours and 30 minutes. Below us on the right, Pembroke. The tip of Wales, the last dry land we shall see until North America. 2,400 miles of deep black sea ahead of us. We're chasing the sunset westwards across the Atlantic.
The flight will take 20 hours. This one went by way of the Great Circle route. It is more likely that an enemy attack would come over the Arctic and Canada. During the long night, the plane stays at 12,000 feet, but it begins to lose altitude as it nears the coast.
X plus 13 hours, the USA at last. The coast of Maine near Bangor. Down to 1,000 feet. The purpose to steal under the radar net, to escape detection, scrape the treetops in the hope of reaching the target area unspotted.
This radar antenna, and many like it, revolves 24 hours every day. But an enemy plane can conceal itself by coming in low and letting the curvature of the earth or high points of the land protect him.
At X plus 18 hours, over the agreed rendezvous point, 2 other B-29s who will accompany us on the rest of this mission, we're now to
Stay away from the big towns, but sooner or later have to pass over a community. This is East Millinocket, and these ladies are volunteer ground observers. They get no pay.
Aircraft flash. 3, multi-motor, very low, Fox Queen, 2-4, red.
All multi-engine planes they see, regardless of size or markings, they report to Bangor Filter Center. At Bangor, Every observed flight is given a number and charted. This one becomes number 211.
3 miles southeast of observation post, flying southwest. Check, thank you.
The man with the 211 flag is the Dean of Engineering at the University of Maine. He does this in his spare time.
Small time motor, very low. Calling radar number 4.
Next, Flight 211 reaches radar 4, a plotting center far up the New England coast.
First plot, George Queen 2142, flying southwest. Track number 211. Time 10:21.
Roger, I've got it. Plotter, I have initial plot for you.
Roger.
It is in George Queen, 2142.
George Queen, 2142.
Right. Direction is southwest.
Direction southwest.
3 aircraft. Multi-motor, very low.
Sergeant, do we have any flight plans from CAA on track 211?
Nothing at all, sir.
Let's make track 211 unknown. Well, let's scramble blue flight on a heading of 230 at 1,000 feet.
Blue flight leader is Dow Air Force Base, also in Maine. Here, F-86 Saberjet interceptors stand at the head of the runway 24 hours a day. The pilots are just a few feet away in the ready truck. They can be airborne in less than 3 minutes.
We're trailing radar 4, scramble blue flight.
Reporter Ed Scott flew alongside one of the 4 scrambled planes.
This is Ed Scott in a T-33 jet taking off alongside with the F-86s. Takeoff time, 10:28. We had no briefing before scrambling and taking off. If radar or ground observers spots the enemy, they'll notify us and give us locations and directions.
This cabin was designated as a ground observation post. A sighting from here would have given the jet pilots something to work from. This one is abandoned and silent, and it makes it tough on the pilots.
Been up here more than 30 minutes, no information from radar. No luck either in finding anything up here in Maine.
Still no sign of any interceptors. If they know we're coming in, they can't find us.
1 hour and still no interception. My pilot has just told me we are now returning to base.
Back at Bangor Filter Center, they give up on 211, not knowing whether it is an enemy or a friendly plane off course. This observation post on this fire tower might have helped, but it was unmanned.
At X plus 18 and a half hours, we're over the Merrimack River, just a little ways from Groton, and on the left is Boston.
This church is southwest of Boston. After more than 70 minutes over U.S. soil, a second spotting is made by an observer. Her call travels down the coast to the New Haven Filter Center, where Flight 211 becomes alive again. 3 multi-engined planes, unidentified.
Very low. No delay.
The Filter Center calls Radar 12, which plots all planes in the southern New England area. Radar 12 calls for jet interceptors, scrambles a flight of all-weather F-94s at Otis Air Force Base on Cape Cod.
Operation Scramble Red Flight.
Said a jet pilot to a reporter. Getting a little old for this sort of thing, aren't you? Jet pilots fly faster and run faster than the rest of us. Our recording gear was strapped in where the radar set usually goes. A jet leans you back against the seat when they pour on the power for takeoff. There isn't any great sense of speed. Seems that someone is just pulling the ground back from under you.
Roger, Red Leader, airborne with 4 chicks, port to 350, over.
At X plus 19 and a half hours, Bridgeport, Connecticut, just below and ahead of us.
Roger, wind steady on 350, bogey at 2 o'clock, 30 miles, over.
Pinkerton says they have picked up the strangers on their radar. Our flight leader has picked them up, but we cannot see them visually. Only broken clouds below. Jets around in the sky as though they were tied to the end of a string, telling them to change course, to reduce speed, to increase speed, trying to bring us in contact with the bogies. We've got a tally-ho now and a visual contact with the B-29s.
Roger, thank you. Check ADCC for any B-29 airplanes in this area.
Now, for the first time, pilot eyes have seen them and identified them as B-29 type aircraft. But there is still the possibility that SAC, the Strategic Air Command, has B-29s in this area. They call SAC at Omaha to check.
Strategic Air Command has no B-29s operating in the New York area.
Anti-aircraft, New York area. 3 B-29 type aircraft approaching New York City. Alert your batteries. Civil Defense, New York City, red alert.
From the moment of the alert, their radar scope will track the bombers and aim the 120-millimeter guns.
With the target perhaps 20 minutes away, we're climbing, still climbing, to attain bombing altitude. The interceptors are coming in at us now. By all calculations, that would have got one of our planes, or we would have gotten him.
Now we're up on the left wing. For the moment, I've lost the B-29s in the clouds, but the pilot obviously can see them.
This B-29 is not coming toward us. This is our gun camera as we attacked it at 550 miles per hour. And if it had been the real thing, the bomber would have been shooting back. Splash 1 B-29, shot down.
Now we're going in on a beam attack. The gun cameras are firing and we pull up terrific speed. Another pass, beam attack on the port side of this formation of B-29s. When he pulls out, there's a tendency for things to blur a little.
Now we're over Long Island Sound. We're setting the craft now for the bombing target, which is only minutes away. Bombardiers at the bomb site. The plane will be set on its course now and won't vary no matter what happens, spiders or not. We go right up to Manhattan Island and to the bombing target.
Get them, but there was no way of proving it. And even at this point, the bombers would have hit something.
Continue target!
X plus 20 hours, and we're in the target area on time. Just below us is the Harlem River. Across the East River to the left, you can see Triborough Bridge and Hell's Gate. Laid out before us like a carpet is Manhattan Island, and off in the hazy distance is the target itself, the Empire State Building. And out before us now is Central Park. Our bombardier says that he has decided to drop the bomb about 1 mile from the target to allow for wind and the angle. We're going to drop the bomb at the end of Central Park.
Our number 2 camera is out in the bomb bay. That thin white line you're looking at is where the bomb bay doors don't quite mesh.
We're about 10 seconds from the bomb release.
Bomb bay doors coming open.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, bombs away. Close the doors. Let's get out of here.
Planes completed their bomb run just 3 minutes before noon. Electronic measurements indicated that the bomb would have exploded within 1 block of the Empire State Building. Of course, this was a simulated raid.
Little more than an exercise. Of course, we can't be sure how many of those bombers would actually have gotten through, how many would have fallen to the fighters, and how many to the ack-ack guns. But according to the Air Force estimates, about 70% of a determined, driven-home attack would get through. We are also reminded that the Civilian Ground Observer Corps is the one additional asset that will help strengthen our radar screen. That Civilian Ground Observer Corps is now at only 1/3 of the required strength, which means that 2/3 of our visual defense is missing. We asked General Hoyt S. Vandenberg, Chief of Staff of the Air Force, what could be done to remedy this gap in our defensive screen. Go ahead in Washington, General Vandenberg.
We need several 100,000 volunteers drawn from our civilian population to work with the Air Force in manning our ground observer corps, posts, and filter stations. Requirements are simple. The most important asset is this, that you who apply have a determination to keep America safe and free. To apply for volunteer duty, you should contact your local office of Civil Defense or write to the Ground Observer Corps, United States Air Force, Washington 25, D.C. Here is your opportunity. Join the Ground Observer Corps today.